Chrystia Freeland is Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, and she joins me in the studio now. Good morning.
Good to be with you, Robin.
Do you believe Jody Wilson-Rabould, or do you believe the Prime Minister?
Of course, I support the Prime Minister 100%. It's a privilege to serve in his cabinet, and for me, serving in his cabinet means supporting him. Having said that, I would like to start by saying I first got to know Ms. Wilson-Raybould during the 2015 election campaign. She and I realized I represent a downtown Toronto riding. She represents a downtown Vancouver riding. And we felt our ridings had a lot in common. So during the campaign, we would talk a bit, at key moments and sort of say, what are you hearing? Here's what I'm hearing. And I always have considered her to be a valued colleague. And I would even say a friend, although our files didn't cross each other too much. I think it's a good thing that she had the opportunity to speak at length yesterday on an official parliamentary platform. I think the Prime Minister took a difficult decision, but the right one, to waive confidentiality and privilege. To me, that's actually an exercise in democracy.
Do you
Having said
her?
that, I believe that she spoke as she said she wanted to do, her truth. Having said that, I am very clearly of the view that the Prime Minister would never apply improper pressure, that the Prime Minister has always been clear about the unique role of the Attorney General and would respect that. I do also want to say, when it comes to pressure, I've been under a lot of pressure on some of the issues that I've handled as a minister. Mm-hmm. There have been extremely robust conversations that I've been part of, both at the cabinet table and in conversations with people from the Prime Minister's office. Some of those arguments I've won. Some of those arguments I've lost.
But this seems
my
to
feeling,
be...
just let me just sort of finish, just to give people a sense of things. Because some people have said, is there pressure in government? And my answer is, of course there is. There is extreme pressure.
Sure.
There was a moment in the NAFTA negotiations when I literally broke out in hives
Minister
because
Freeland,
it was a lot of pressure.
Nobody denies that there's pressure in government, but assuming that this conversation went down as Ms. Wilson-Raybould laid out, do you think it was appropriate for Justin Trudeau to bring up the Quebec election with her and remind her that he was an MP in that province?
So to the point about a minister, including the Prime Minister, speaking as an MP for a particular constituency, I do that all the time. I'm the Member of Parliament for University Rosedale. I am incredibly proud to be the Member of Parliament for University Rosedale, and it's my job to represent my constituents. One thing that I have really valued around the cabinet table is the geographic diversity of ministers who speak for very specific parts of Canada.
Come on. We're talking about reversing a legal decision for political reasons here. We're not just talking about you saying, I connect with this story because I'm from the Toronto area.
No, and that's not what I was saying. I truly believe it is a feature, and I see it as a very positive feature of our Westminster-style parliamentary democracy, that people are elected representing a very specific part of the country. Every single person in Parliament is, including the Prime Minister. And I think it's entirely appropriate for us in everything we do to speak from that role and duty as a member of Parliament for a place, as well as to do our other roles. And from that conversation at the cabinet table in caucus of a bunch of people representing very specific groups of Canadians, we get better decisions that represent the whole country.
I want to ask you something that has to deal with your role specifically. As Minister of Foreign Affairs, you have maintained repeatedly in the face of demands from China to release Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou that Canada is a rule of law country where judicial process is not subject to political interference. Do you think that this is the way that a rule of law country operates?
I do want to make a specific comment on the case of Ms. Meng, particularly because we're in a very difficult situation with China where 2 Canadians have been arbitrarily detained. And I do want to say to Canadians, but also to any Chinese officials who may be listening, that in the Meng case, our government has been scrupulous. Decisions that are correctly taken at the official, i.e. non-political level, have been scrupulously taken at the official, non-political level, and there has been no interference. I also want to be clear, though, that saying you're a rule of law country doesn't mean political decisions don't get taken. In the Meng case, there will be a moment when a political decision needs to be taken. It will be, I think Canadians are now learning a lot more about the particular role of the Minister of Justice and Attorney General. We could come, we're not there yet, but there's a potential path in the Meng case, as in all extradition cases, where the Minister of Justice could need to, depending on how things develop, could need to take a political decision about whether to approve the extradition. So I want to be clear that we could come to, depending on how the legal process goes, to a political decision, which would be entirely appropriate.
You're a proud feminist, yes?
Absolutely.
Now we know Jody Wilson-Rabould's side of the story. What do you make of those reports that that said that she was difficult to work with, when it looks now like a lot more like she was standing up for her principles?
So, as I said at the beginning, and I made a point, it was important for me, Robin, in coming to talk to you, to talk about my own relationship with Ms. Wilson-Raybould. At a kind of ministerial level, we haven't crossed files very much, so I haven't had that kind of direct 2 ministers working on something together experience, but we have been in cabinet together, and I've heard her speak on issues. I have never found her to be anything other than a thoughtful colleague whose perspective I have valued. And I have found her, she is a woman of strong views. I like to think that I am too.
Should she remain in caucus?
I imagined you might ask me that. And my own feeling is, and I'm just speaking for myself because that's not a decision for me to take, it's a decision for caucus. I was glad that after Ms. Wilson-Raybould resigned from cabinet, that she chose to stay in caucus. Caucus is a very broad church. Lots of people have different views. Having those different views helps us make good decisions. But the key thing is, and this is how I approach it, in the caucus room, in the cabinet room, in the Prime Minister's office, we often disagree robustly. I am sometimes one of the people disagreeing, including sometimes with the Prime Minister. But at the end of the day, we come to a view. I feel the Prime Minister, as the Prime Minister, gets the last word. And at the end of the day, when you leave the room, you have to play as a united team. And I feel very strongly about that, because I think being united when we left the room has been extremely important for us on issues like NAFTA.
Do you still have faith in the Prime Minister?
100%.
Even with these allegations that he obstructed justice?
I have 100% faith in the Prime Minister. He has been very clear throughout that he understood the unique role of the Attorney General and that he honored and respected that.
Okay. We promised to let you go by 22 minutes past. That's the time. Thank you very much for being here today.
Good to talk to you, Robin.
That's Chrystia Freeland. She is Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister.